result of the two deputations that we've just had, we've got a recommendation from each. So first of all, we'll look at the recommendation from this council committee on the predator-free Kapiti Coast one, and if Evan, thank you, will share it. So, any thoughts to this, and if not, a mover and a seconder?
I just wonder if we could broaden it out a bit more as well, and look at how we can support an overall, predator-free strategy for Kapiti through that organisation. I mean, that's a very specific one, and that's great. But could we have an additional one to look at how council can support a Kapiti-wide predator-free initiative?
If we put that forward, would there be someone who'd be willing to second that? Are you able to?
Should I change it to the entire district? Or?
No, leave that.
Yes, make a separate one,
yeah.
one in front, yeah, at the top. Yes. Actually, maybe make the what Councillor Coase just said, the first part, because that's the higher level.
Yeah. I think it's about a strategy for how council can work with community organisations towards a predator-free Kapiti. So I don't think we need to, because they haven't incorporated themselves yet as an organisation. So I'd rather keep it general at this stage, So, and we can certainly facilitate that. Strategy. I think it's a strategy for working with community groups towards a predator-free Kapiti.
Well, I suppose even higher level is actually request that it's basically support staff in working together. In working with community groups, because developing a strategy, we know, depends what you mean by a strategy, because they can be quite time consuming.
Maybe the wrong word.
Yeah, so I think, and that could, if you just say support, it actually could potentially include that.
For supporting.
Yes, that requests that staff.
Support community groups.
Yes, exactly.
Because we don't want to coordinate it, because that includes costs.
Yes.
Support community groups towards a predator-free Kapiti.
Yes.
Do we want to know?
Request support.
Isn't it to consider how council might support community groups? It would be nice to know what. And the ways in which we can support them. So I think, to have some proposals for how council might support community groups towards, becoming predator-free, something along those lines.
Yeah. How about that? Okay. Deputy Mayor Kirby.
I'm just questioning the need for that A1, because the B1 covers it off, because the purposes of predator-free Kapiti was looking to develop a broad district-wide plan. So by us asking staff to work with them, we're automatically covering off A.
Yeah, I would have thought it was the other way around, in all honesty, because.
Yeah, but I think B is more.
I don't think we want to instruct staff.
Yeah.
Everything. If you said do everything, then there's no influence to say that council should work on doing its own. They could be saying, well, let other organisations do it, but I think we need to do both. Yeah.
What about the first one, supporting community groups coordinated predator-free Kapiti Coast, because you're really helping to coordinate it rather than to do it. To bring them together.
Groups,
Towards a coordinated
towards a
predator-free.
coordinated approach to.
Yeah. Because you're really wanting just to coordinate them rather than to do it. You don't want
Yeah, just
staff
try
to
and do it. No.
have to do a coordinated approach.
Kind of what B talks about a coordinated program.
It's a program, not an approach. It's a different approach to.
For predator-free.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
I think we'll just leave it like that. And now looking at B, it says that we request staff. We can't really request.
So you're recommending to council that they request
But even so, council can't really do that either.
Yeah, well, council, the recommendation from council would be
Well, what about that they support, well, support, work with predator-free Kapiti Coast? Recommends to council that they support, work with Kapiti.
So we're happy with the first part, Deputy Mayor Kirby?
I think the intent of what we're trying to do here is really great. I just don't think council's a facilitator and
Yeah.
a stand alongside, not a one that should be doing this work. We need to facilitate the energy in the community and work with them. And so I think we've got to be clear that our role in this space is which I would suggest that Andy's already doing.
He is.
So maybe it might be a better way to endorse the staff's work that's already going on in this space, rather than request that staff do something else. Because I think what we heard today was staff are actually doing a good job of working with predator-free Kapiti to facilitate their role to try and improve the outcomes for predator control across Kapiti. So let's endorse that as a community, as a committee, and say we want that to be facilitated as much as we can as council within the current work programs, because I think Andrew's already into that space already. But I'd let our group manager maybe respond to that, Rach, whether that's appropriate. That would just be my thoughts. Because I don't think we need another strategy as council.
I totally agree.
I think we've got enough trouble with the
we've got rid of
strategies
that.
we've got
rid of that.
to implement them.
Yeah.
Current work.
Yes, yeah. So what you're saying is change B to say, basically it's just, yes, endorses the work that KCDC is already doing.
Yeah. I think that would be way more powerful for our staff to hear, for Andy and his
Yes,
team to hear
yes,
that this
yes.
committee's endorsing their work that they're doing in that
Yeah,
space.
so that's the second one, Evan, yeah.
Predator-free Kapiti Coast doesn't particularly exist yet.
No.
As an organisation, so I think leave it.
Well,
Well, I think using those words around community groups that are working towards predator-free Kapiti is better than rather than naming a specific organisation.
Yeah, so I'm just wondering, endorses the current efforts by council to work in the predator-free space, and its continued efforts to work with community groups. Well, yes, that's
I think it's working towards a predator-free.
yes,
Kapiti.
yeah.
You know? So,
Not ideal for this, but anyway.
To achieve a predator-free Kapiti Coast, I think just leave,
Keep it broader.
yeah, to achieve,
in order to achieve.
yeah. Yeah, that leaves it nice and general.
Okay,
Maybe the second one recommends that council that they continue to work with predator-free Kapiti Coast, because they're already doing that, aren't they? On a coordinated so instead of requesting staff,
Yeah,
that
okay.
they continue
Okay.
to work with.
Just bearing in mind that that doesn't technically exist as an legal entity at the moment.
Yeah. So I
Do we
think,
need to name it? Can we not just say that it works on a coordinated program on predator control?
I think it's the only group at the moment.
We might need to adjourn if we're gonna.
I think, you know, we're either going to have to adjourn this or we keep, or we basically just agree with what we've got on here if it's actually, I think the intent is there. So is there anyone willing? I will move
I'll
both of
second it.
those.
Can we just change?
No, we're going to move and a seconder. We have a mover and a seconder. Okay, we'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Passed. Thank you. Right, so now we also have a recommendation on the wastewater testing program, and hopefully this one's a bit clearer. So I think Evan's going to put that forward. I'll move that. Thank you, Shelley. Discussion?
We can only do that with the cooperation of ESR and the police.
With investigating, it's not actually
investigating.
doing anything,
Only
which I'd like to think
investigating
we would end up doing, but it's,
Investigating, having the test done would be more accurate. We can't test them ourselves.
not saying
We
we will.
could, I know, but what we need to do is just investigates having OTACI included in the current testing regime that's being conducted by police and ESR.
Well, I think when they presented to us, it's either as a small part of the X group, where it's only done for 3 months, or whether we potentially pay for it.
Or is it added, that investigates adding testing at Otaki wastewater treatment facility?
We still need them to do that
Simon.
work.
Did you have a comment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just wondering, I mean, why we just do more than just investigates and say, let's make an application for Otaki to be tested in 2026?
So that may
Then
well be.
then we can explore if we've been denied or turned down on that. Then we can explore funding it ourselves.
I think by doing this here, that may be one of the options that comes out of it. If you actually are too narrow
Specific,
in what
yeah.
requesting, we may not end up where we want to end up.
And we're only asking for investigation
Yeah.
into how it can be achieved. So if it can't be achieved, it can't be achieved.
Do we need,
But it will go through to that lady who seemed pretty keen if someone contacted her that it would happen.
Yeah, well, I think there was support from both of the
do we need the
speakers.
word illicit before substances to be more specific there?
Well, I suppose we had that there, but we're not certain whether antibiotics and pesticides are being included as well.
Yeah, so
So that's why it's substances. And it's the
That
same
would-
as Paraparam.
The police wouldn't fund that, I don't think.
I don't know, but it's a case of
Yeah.
asking the
Yeah.
questions.
it'll be the same substances, which at the moment is the illicit substances, isn't it? Cocaine, MDMA and methamphetamine.
Yeah, I think you'd have a good case to get the illicit substances tested. The other thing is a bit of a grey area about who would pay for it and how we would get comparative data, given that it's not widely done.
Okay, so do you want to change it to illicit drugs or,
for now, and I think
But
okay.
what substances were being tested? It was just at Parapuma, it was only the 3.
No,
Yeah.
I think there was about 7 of them.
Okay. What's the start? You happy with that, Simon?
Thank you.
Mr. Councillor Kirby.
Yeah, I'm just, are we wanting to add it to what's already happening, what they already do? We're just wanting to add Otaki as one of those things, right? It gets
Yes.
tested in the same pattern as everything else.
Wanted to look into it.
I think we're wanting to look into it, and I think by actually having some idea, it may well get added to the list of permanently measured sites.
So, can I just,
Can you put your mind putting, yeah,
so we're asking council to investigate testing at the Otaki wastewater treatment facility. Should we put in there by a ESR for the same illicit substance? Because
Yes.
otherwise we're asking council to do it.
yeah,
but
okay, yep, that's
Yeah.
fair enough.
Otaki wastewater treatment facility by ESR for the same, just means that we're not putting it on us.
Okay, so I know I've moved this and it's been seconded. I'm happy to accept those changes. So was it Sophie who seconded? Oh, no, Shelley, are you happy to second that? Okay, I'll put that as recommendation to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion is passed. Thank you. Thank you. Right. So now we are going to move on to our members' business. Leave of absence. I haven't received any leaves of absence. If you do have any, more than welcome to pass them on to the Mayor's office. Matters of an urgent nature, I haven't received any of those either. So we'll now move on to updates. 8.1 is update on the Greener Neighbourhoods Program and the 2024 Climate Action Grants recipients. Thank you, Rob and team.
Ahi Maria, good afternoon everyone. Thank you, Madam Chair. Ko Rob Dunn Tuku Ingoa, Community Sustainability Advisor. Thank you for the opportunity to give you an update on a couple of programs that we've got running. I'll take the reports as read, but I would like to highlight with the Climate Action Grant reporting there, that's just interim reporting, and there's sort of final reporting in the form of written reports due later this year. And I'd also like to highlight there's some great sort of overlap and connectivity between the programs we'll give a brief update on and the earlier presentation on predator-free carpeting. And taking the report as read, I do have a little bit of a presentation just to help to bring it all to life. So this is interim reporting here. Staying close to the microphone. Interim reporting here. So this Coastal Restoration Trust video, the link to the completed video was in the report, but this is a great 13-minute video that provides restoration advice for community groups working on coastal restoration across Kapiti. It's a bit of a how-to guide, if you like. Having a chat with Andy and his team, so we're not actually going to promote it widely until later in the year because his team doesn't have the capacity to respond to any interest that it might generate at the moment. It's a busy time of year for them, and they're short-staffed as well. But we'll be looking to promote it later in the year. But it's a fantastic video, and hopefully it provides some practical advice to community groups that want to step into this space, and also takes a little bit of the load off Andy and his team as well. So this is another example here of a composting project that we funded through the Climate Action Grants at Kapiti College, and we did a bit of a site visit there the other day. So as you can see, really great sort of a cross-school project. They've set up really effective compost system. It's integrated with their gardening project, and they're really integrating it across the curriculum. So as an example of that, they're pulling samples of the compost out. They're looking at it under microscopes. They're identifying at a granular level what the helpful microorganisms are in the compost and what role they play in food systems. and so they're integrating it into the science curriculum. And students were really involved in the planning process and the funding application, and then various aspects of building the bin and getting it up and running. So we can bring you more stories like that later this year. So, and a bit of an update on our Greener Neighbourhoods program. So this was a program that council ran and was parked up in about 2019. So we've had a 5-year hiatus. We've kicked it off again this year. We've got 5 groups who have signed up to participate. And we've got a community in a group in Otaki at the top of the screen there. Next group down is an interesting one. There's quite a nice overlap with predator-free Kapiti, because that's a group of households in Peka Peka who live just north of Farrazin Reserve, and they've all got reasonable sized properties that are adjacent to areas of significant ecosystems. So there's quite a lot of overlap between important areas for GW and Kapiti Coast District Council. So their focus initially has been on controlling rabbits, and they've gone 50-50 in funding with GW to control rabbits. And then we will step into that space and help them with mustelid control and some planting afterwards. And Andy and his team have encouraged them to apply for heritage funding to further support that work. So it's sort of an example of how we can work with communities to step into that predator control space. And once we help to build that understanding, that capability within communities, and then we can sort of step back and those people are up and running. So the next group down, Waikanae Beach. So, and this photo sort of highlights another important aspect of the project. It's not just about groups of households that focus on a sustainability-related project. A big part of the kaupapa, if you like, is just bringing communities together. So it's about community connection. It's about building community resilience, and we work with REMO, so education workshops about emergency readiness, and then there's a chosen sustainability project that we support groups with as well. And these are examples of the projects that different groups are working on. So I mentioned, sorry, if I go back a couple. So the last couple of groups on the screen there, Mangako Tukituku Valley. So this is another really good example of a project that overlaps with predator-free Kapiti. So this is a really big area, just inland from Paraparaumu. There's hundreds of hectares of reasonably pristine native bush there, but it's an interesting area of sort of overlapping jurisdiction between DOC and Greater Wellington and Kapiti Coast District Council. And you've got a small number of residents there that are really passionate and engaged with predator control. So we're working with them to see how we can amplify their efforts. We've got a meeting next week with DOC and Greater Wellington Regional Council and local residents. And this is exactly the sort of community that once we can bring key stakeholders together, we could then connect with larger district-wide initiatives and really help to support their work. Funding's always a challenge, but sort of start small and do what we can at the moment and see what we can grow in the future. And then our last group down to the south, based in Paikokariki, and they're keen to set up a community tool library. I think they actually want to call it a stuff library. Yes, it might include garage tools, but not restricted to items you might find in the garage. So thinking about kitchen items as well, household items, those sorts of things that maybe they only get used once every couple of months, and having a library to share these resources around could be a really effective way to go. So they're pretty passionate about setting that up. So these are examples of projects and that groups are interested in. And that's the end of the presentation. Thank you. So with all that said, welcome any questions.
Councillor Warwick.
Do any of these, or do you, or like Predator Free and that, ever approach NZTA for help with funding for predators? Because when the expressway first went through, there was a huge rabbit problem on the CWB that was, they were asked and asked and asked to do something about it, and they never did. And now we've got an explosion of rabbits, but it's also that, you know, it's a corridor for pests. So I'm wondering if they have any responsibility, because notoriously not. But
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. That's a good question, and one that I'm not well placed to answer, but I can talk to Andy, and it might even be something to kick around with GDUB and just find out, well, as well as approaching NZTA, but those conversations may or may not already have happened, but we could find out about that.
So if I can make some comment about that, it's my understanding that it's the owner of the land who is responsible for pest control. And so if it's NZTA land, then they are responsible for it. And I know previously that there have been some concerns that people surrounding the NZTA land have actually been doing their best to control the pests, but, you know, pests don't know where boundaries are. And so you've got to have everyone working together on the same page. So, and I think it's not only NZTA, there are a number of other owners who it's important to get them on board as well. Thank you. So now, thank you for that. So we'll now move on to Christian.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks for the brief presentation and for keeping it brief. Two points. On the grants, great to hear the feedback, and I was very pleased to vote for all of these projects and programs. And it's just, and as we move forward, is there going to be more of a focus on the emissions reductions outcomes and the quantification of those? And also, is there a way of bundling up some of the co-benefits that flow from these projects as well? Because I know, like the compost, it's good to be able to show the holistic benefits of taking action, even if it is driven by initial emissions reductions, but sort of having some numbers out there about what we've actually achieved by spending this money would be great for the long-term sustainability of having such programs. And just to say, I welcome the restoration of the Greener Neighbourhoods programme, and I look forward to that being a success.
Terrific. Thanks for the comments and questions there. As you know, we don't have any further funding for climate action grants, and while we're working on possible sponsorship arrangements to continue that, and there might be other funding avenues that Council could arrange to help to continue offering something similar. That's currently not something we can offer, but even when we do get in a position to offer those grants again, then we will bring that back to this committee and we can talk about those criteria and whether we want to focus on emissions reduction. And there's probably also an opportunity to support groups to understand how to more effectively quantify their emissions reduction associated with their projects. So an example of that Kapiti College compost project, we've also encouraged them to apply for funding through the waste levy grants to conduct a waste audit across the school. So if they understand what they're throwing out on a regular basis, and then we can map that again in 6 or 12 months, and we can, for example, what proportion of that is organic waste that could be diverted, especially now there's a compost bin sitting up, then we can actually start to measure, hey, we've actually diverted whatever percentage of waste towards an effective compost system, and therefore we can quantify emissions associated with that. So a lot of these community groups they've got a lot of enthusiasm and they're willing to roll up their sleeves and put the time in, but maybe we can help to connect the dots with some of the expertise to quantify the emissions reduction associated with that work. And the restoration work, the benefits of healthy ecosystems and the sequestration potential, that would be another area where it's sort of an emerging field of research that we could support groups to understand that better.
Thank Thank you, Rob. So thank you for your question too, Christian. And so we now move on to Councillor Hanford.
Thank you. Just a couple of quick questions. In terms of the Greener Neighbourhood scheme, are there opportunities for other communities to sign on slightly later in the piece, or is there kind of like a cut-off where now we've got the 5 and they're the ones we're rolling with for the next given period of time, and how long is that period of time?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. Great question. We've got the capacity to work with 5 groups this year, and we've got our 5. The program runs from sort of May through to November, and then we hope to work with another 5 groups next year. So we've got the ball rolling now. We've got momentum, and it's about spreading the word and continuing to work with as many groups as we can in the future.
Awesome. And just one other question, in terms of the climate action grants and the recipients across the 2 years that we've done the grants, I remember, I think it was last year, the end of last year, when we brought all of the recipients into the same room, and there was, you know, a real buzz, a real energy in council chambers. Is something like that planned for either the Greener Neighbourhood scheme, so that communities can come in and learn about the 5 projects and how they might be able to get involved, or with the climate action grants, the recipients for this year?
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad you asked that question, because I think in February when we came and presented to this committee, a similar question was raised regarding bringing climate action grant recipients together for another knees up. We had a quick check with our DEM services team, just given it's an election year and the appropriateness of that, and the advice there is best to do that after the election. So we can bring people together for that event after the election. If for whatever reason we have some elected or community board members that were involved in the climate action grants who are not with council post-election, I'm sure we can still extend an invite. But because you were
an invite, that's okay.
but because you were intimately involved in getting the project up and running. So, in terms of sort of engaging the wider public in those events, or sort of extending those invitations out to the community, we'll just have to think carefully about how to manage that one. But I agree with the principle that it's really great to bring people together to celebrate success and to help to connect all of our great community people who are really passionate about doing all this work, and we can definitely look for events that achieve that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you
so much for your work, and Evelina as well. Thanks.
I was just going to add a little bit in, sorry, through you, Madam Chair. Also with Greener Neighbourhoods at the end, we've got Sustainable Spring that Rob and the team are also preparing for, so there might be an opportunity for those groups to showcase also through that program, perhaps what they've been up to. So always looking at those opportunities, but they're so new and burgeoning, we don't want to have those conversations here.
Thank you for that, Monique. So I really admire the work that you're doing in terms of the space, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how these 5 groups do this year, and how they hopefully can inspire other groups to do the same type of work. I have a question. So in a previous Trainium, I was actually on the Waste Levy Allocations Committee, and my memory is that a number of groups received tools, gardening type stuff, and I think there was one from Paikakariki, and I'm just wondering, whether those tools are still available to the community, or what has happened to them, because that would be a good starting point.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. That's a great question, and the waste levy grants actually sit with our waste minimisation team, so I'm not well placed to answer that specifically, but it is something I can discuss with them, because as you say, if we have community resources sitting there, then maybe they can be utilised by some of these groups.
Yes.
That said, generally we sort of find within our different towns that our pro-community, pro-sustainability people are pretty well connected already, but I can definitely make inquiries.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, well, thank you very much. Rob, Simon, sorry, yes, Sorry, Simon,
That's
off you
all right.
go.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, Rob and team. Great work. My question is just following on what you've said, Madam Chair, and also Councillor Warwick, is the situation I had earlier this year is that one of the local pharmacists, or ladies who work at the pharmacy, reported that there was a huge possum problem in a shed just across the road from them. And I made some inquiries, and council said, no, it's pretty well, Doc has to deal with that, and Doc doesn't really have the resources and can't go onto private property, which it was on private property. And so my question is do we have any solutions for landowners, rather than trying to point the finger at them and say, hey, it's your problem, fix it out? How do we work with them together? Is there solutions, are there communication channels if someone reports, let's say, a big problem in a certain area in Kapiti?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think it gets a little bit complex in terms of overlapping jurisdiction between KCDC and GW. Definitely have quite a strong mandate for pest control, but again, that's something that I could talk more about with Andy and GW reps. We've got some GW staff who live locally but work for GW, and their mandate is pest control, so we could have those discussions and just see what their advice is.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Madam Chair.
So you actually raise a really interesting point, and I'm so often, particularly on private land, often there's lots of traps and knowledge out there that people are actually quite willing to help other people with, and it's about, you know, whether you go onto Facebook or some of those local channels that, you know, you actually have a call out saying, you know, I've got this problem, can someone come and help me? And so I'm not sure how the issue was resolved. Pardon? I do? Oh. We found that because we have 3. So yes, so maybe it's a continuing conversation, but I think there's, actually I was going to say there's more than one way to skin a cat. It's probably not the best thing to say. Exactly, yeah. Yeah, so, but I think, you know, there's always you know, there's always ways to find, you know, a solution to issues like that. So yes, you do raise a really good point though, Simon. So I think that ends the end of this present, actually no, go for it.
Thank you. You interpreted my raised eyebrows perfectly there. Just, if I may just respond to a couple of queries that members of this group have raised in earlier meetings, but they're not formally part of this report. And one has been around, have we approached local businesses around funding for some of this work? And we are definitely having a conversation with a local business that is potentially quite a large funder. That would really help us, for example, with climate action grants or some of these other initiatives. However, those conversations are still ongoing, and they're taking quite a bit longer than anticipated, and currently going to their board and so on and so forth. So until we sort of understand how that big piece of the puzzle might fit in, we're sort of limited in our ability to approach other smaller funding opportunities. But it is something that we've heard from this committee, and we're definitely following up on. And the other one is around education for schools and secondary and primary schools. And again, we're involved in there's a program called the Climate Change Learning Program, which was developed in Christchurch with Christchurch City Council and rolled out to 12 schools there, approved by the Ministry of Education, now being trialled in the Hutt Valley, now being piloted in the Hutt Valley. We're involved in that pilot over there, and we're in discussions with key stakeholders about what it might look like to roll it out here as well. So just following up on other items that have been raised.
Well, thank you very much, Rob, Andy, Jamie, Evelina, and Monique for putting this presentation together and coming along and discussing it with us. And I, look forward to hearing the further results as to what good people are doing. So thank you very much again. And so that's the end of our updates today and our presentation. So now we'll move on to the, I suppose, the admin of our meeting. So item 9 is confirmation of Oh, sorry, you are, yes, you are right too. So on page, what page are they on? Yeah, page 9, we have 2 recommendations noting the update of the project progress of the 24 Climate Action Grant funding, and notes the Greener Neighbourhood program is underway. So have a mover for those, Councillor Hanford and Councillor Warwick to second that. Any discussion? All those in favour? Against? The recommendations are passed. Thank you. Thank you very much again. Thank you. Thank you for that, Councillor Hanford.
Thank you.
So now we'll move on to confirmation of our minutes on page 25. I'll take these as being read. Do I have a mover for that these are a true and correct record? Thank you,
I'll move that.
Mr. Judge. And Simon going to second that. All those in favour? Aye. Those against? Passed. Thank you. So now we'll move on to our closing karakia. Mr. Moore, would you like to do that again too, please?
May blessings be upon us all and our business be successful, so that our words endure and our languages endures. May the spirit be strong, may Māori be settled and in balance among the activities we will do today. Join, gather and unite. Forward together.
Thank you very much. So our next meeting is on the 7th of August. Thank you very much for your attendance today and supporting both staff and for those people who have presented today. Very, very interesting meeting. Thank you.